Hi everyone, I'm going to film myself shoveling snow. It's important because I'm stage 4 cancer. I've been stage 4 since roughly March of 2016 because a Catholic health GYN oncologist told me, and a DOVE detective, that means domestic violence police detective, not a peace officer, she was just an investigator for Columbia Police Department in Columbia, Missouri, that he was doing a DNC biopsy. Instead, he did an ablation to deliberately accelerate my cancer as a whistleblower federal investigator who worked for a private attorney who had worked for Tony West, Kamala Harris's brother-in-law at DOJ, and once a Fed, always a Fed. He tries to pawn himself off as a civil rights scholar, but he really isn't. He's a white, privileged prick. Racist, gay-bashing prick. He thinks because he likes to suck dick that he's gay. He's not. He mistreats his mama. He hates women. He's not gay. He's a straight man who likes to suck dick. That's all that means. And I'm gay, so I don't have no problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is motherfuckers posing as gay people who really hate gay people. Just use them to have access to drugs. Who hate people of color, who just use them to have access to drugs. And all his shit was pretty much academic. He's never known real discrimination because he's too wealthy. He never had to worry about the police coming after him for shit he didn't do, worry about whether or not he was going to catch a drug charge. He never had to worry about that shit. Plus, he was a former prosecutor. I lived with him, and he swore me in and didn't ask me, just did it. Then used me on cases, made a bunch of money, didn't want to pay me. I was his girlfriend. I was just supposed to protect his white male privileges like his mammy. Thought I was his house slave. But I'm stage 4, and I'm able to do this, shovel the snow, because I have a special diet. And what kills you about cancer is much like an abscess tooth. As long as you treat the infection, and there's always plenty of it, there's always lots of infection, especially at stage 4, that you're never going to build up a tolerance to it. At least not as much as I take. I don't have to worry about that. I don't take enough of it to worry about that bullshit. I take just enough to pull me out of septic shock and keep me good in what big pharma and predatory healthcare monopolies like Big Health and Centene Corporation and United don't want you to know is they're letting people go septic from the cancer, treating it, which your liver and kidneys and spleen and everything's already fucked up from that. Your heart, because then you build fluid around your heart. You get sick, you're not absorbing your fluid, so you're severely dehydrated. You're not absorbing the nutrients in your food because your digestive system can't break it down. Then they hit you with a bunch of chemo and targeted radiation. That targeted radiation, when you burn something, it creates infection. Now you got more infection. Well, they're not treating the infection to keep you sick and in pain, to feed you fucking narcotics so you can't work. And then they lie to you and say, oh, you're going to die. You're never going to get well if you don't get this expensive chemotherapy and targeted radiation and all this other bullshit that they... That's not to say it doesn't have therapeutic uses, it does, but your life doesn't depend on it. That's what I'm trying to say. Your life does not depend on chemotherapy and targeted radiation. And so then you go broke paying for the shit, and what your insurance doesn't cover, you go sell your house, sell your boat, sell your cars, go bankrupt, or they put a lien against your property like they do in the state of Georgia. A lot of states you have outstanding hospital bills, they put a lien on anything you own, any assets. And we already have Medicare for all, folks. There's EMTALA laws, the COBRA Act, the DEA guidelines demand that they treat patients whether they have insurance or not. Because if you've got a painful condition and they don't get it taken care of, you're going to go look for drugs or alcohol to ease that pain, whether you get it from a doctor or get it off the street. And the doctors, how do doctors profit from addiction? They say that it costs the taxpayers. Because they defraud and HUD and Medicaid, and many of the drug addict clinics are doing the same thing. Putting false psychiatric shit in your records to make it look like you can't be cured or you got a personality disorder that makes it hard for them to help you. Meanwhile, they're bilking your fucking insurance company. And the insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act profit from it because they get kickbacks for all that shit. I don't know all the legalities of it. Chad went into a lot of it. Chad's biggest problem with the Affordable Care Act, Chad being my ex-boyfriend and the lawyer who I work for, which, because I met him in AA because of their false diagnoses, he's a cop. He don't get to go in AA and talk shit about any of us. It's all protected. So AA's about to file their own fucking lawsuit, I have a feeling. Because he's a public official who's threatening members of AA and drawing AA into a public controversy. They're a tax-exempt charity. They're a real church. They ain't like these other corrupt motherfuckers like Catholic Health and all its subsidiaries and bogus homeless shelters and bogus charities that are basically there to get federal grants and help the hospitals defraud, help the hospitals and Centene Corporation and United defraud health. Because if any of them are honest, they all go down. And we already know the Catholic Church is real good about hiding scandals. All kinds of scandals, not just child porn. There's a whole lot more going on at that church. That's why they can't prosecute the pedophiles. Because the pedophiles know about all the other scams. You see what I'm saying? And you saw in the Jeffrey Epstein case, he took those rape victims to a doctor for that doctor to falsify their records, call them crazy, and dope them with unnecessary psych meds and narcotics, sedatives, controlled substances. That's pretty damn bold. He did it because he knew that the Clintons and Trump were profiting and enabling all these healthcare fraud shit. Trump's the guy who was supposed to handle Trump care was Governor Rick Scott, Florida Governor Rick Scott, who my ex is a Florida lawyer. His father was on a board of directors at Orlando Regional Medical Center in Florida, helping Rick Scott and the Catholic Health Association defraud people running these fraud scams. Chad was also a bias crimes advisor for Orlando PD and a DNC campaign manager and political strategist who helped get Val Demings elected. So Val Demings, Rick Scott, DeSantis, all that shit about, oh, he's racist and they say shit, that's all to score points with their constituents. Behind the scenes, they're all voting with Trump and keeping Trump out of jail, and Trump's keeping them out of jail. All that bickering and pissing and moaning kabuki theater you see on mainstream media is, some of it's bullshit, playing all sides against the middle to keep all of us divided, but a lot of it is because they're still egomaniacs. They know all this legislation is just running scams on the American people. They just want to argue over whose name is on it so so-and-so can get the fucking Nobel Peace Prize like they actually did something to help somebody. Obama wants his name on the scam. Trump wants his name on the scam. Joe Biden will be next. That's why Joe Biden is not trying to protect Obama's legacy. He's trying to protect Obama's fraud schemes. Now, you were saying, well, Kamala Harris is black. No, she ain't. She's Jamaican. That means she may be part African, but she's part Native American too. Jamaica is part of the North American continent, not the African continent. Her brother-in-law, Tony West, is who my ex-boyfriend and her husband, my ex-boyfriend worked for Kamala Harris's brother-in-law at DOJ. And as you know, Acosta, the labor secretary that Trump appointed, the Florida prosecutor on the Epstein case, he had to resign just because he didn't want there to be even the slightest implication of impropriety. He threw the Epstein case and started working as Epstein's advocate and the Clintons' advocate and Trump's advocate as the U.S. District Attorney who's supposed to be prosecuting Epstein because Kamala Harris's husband's law firm reached out and offered him a lucrative job. He threw that case on purpose to keep the Clintons, because if Epstein got popped for sex trafficking, you know he was going to fucking go ahead and testify about all the other shit they were doing too. Because Epstein didn't make his money honestly. He was a fraudster. And anybody who helps the Clintons make money on their other fraud schemes is going to get protected on any other crimes they commit. Whether it's sex trafficking, child molestation, rape. In my case, it's capital homicide to avoid RICO detection or RICO charges. And I may not present too well, but when I walked into the federal courthouse in Western District of New York, and I wanted to proceed pro se in a Qui-Town whistleblower lawsuit, I was interviewed by 4 attorneys. And you don't even get the goddamn paperwork to file the lawsuit to turn into the clerk unless they interview you and make sure, number one, it's a federal case, and number two, you're not a litigious person who just wants to, everybody thinks the federal rights are in violation, and they are. Everybody's are. We have medical martial law right now because those doctors cover their ass and get the police involved in the scams by lying and calling people drug-seeking addicts and red flag them with the police. Shit, where is this damn... I'm trying to get this damned... these string lights off of here. Because I'm going to end up fucking... But whistleblowers, Obama did not hesitate to... He proudly announced, I don't like whistleblowers. And we already know he hates us whistleblowers. In my particular case, I can send this motherfucking ass to prison. And Biden basically has a hit out on Snowden. He threatened sanctions on any country that gave Snowden asylum. That's a hit. They'll get him over here and they will kill him in a fucking military prison is what they'll do. If people don't take me seriously, number one, because I'm female. Number two, because I'm gay. Number three, because I'm autistic.